Hi, welcome back. This is lesson 3. It's called the Upland Landscapes in the UK. What I'd like you to do in a moment is pause the video and write down the keywords. But there's just 3 things I want to mention. The first is handwriting. If teachers can't read it, then nor can examiners. So as you can work at your own speed on this, please really focus on handwriting. The second thing is you need to be green penning your work in detail using the model answers. The third thing is that we need to aim for real accuracy in our work. So that means we need to be using place-specific information, place names where possible. We need to be using examples of rock types. We need to be using appropriate vocabulary and language. We just need to aim for greater accuracy. You don't have to write a huge amount for this type of geography, but you do have to be accurate with the language. Pause the video now, write down the keywords and the title. Okay, there's a lot to get through in this lesson, so I'm not going to go through this Connect quiz. I'd like you just to write the correct answer and then pause the video. Okay, so here are your answers, and if you had time to do the challenge at the end, how do we know that the south was used to be covered in seas? Because it's made from chalk, and chalk is made from dead sea creatures. Okay, so we're going to learn about this place called the Lake District today. Now, the Lake District is an incredible place. It's a series of ancient volcanoes which have also experienced glaciation, the process of glaciation, which we looked at in lesson 2, the last lesson. So it's experienced both tectonics and glaciation. The Lake District is this amazing place here, and that is in the northwest of England. And you can also say that it's in the kind of northwest of the UK, give or take. It's more kind of, yeah, it's not as far up. Of course, you've got Scotland to the north, but to say the northwest of the UK or England is absolutely fine. Now, were it not for my face in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, you would see just what an incredible place it is. I want you to imagine that you're standing there. What kind of questions would you ask as a student of geography? If you were looking down there, or if you were looking down there, what kind of questions would you ask? Would you ask what type of rock it is? Maybe you would ask, is there a U-shaped valley? Might you ask, how is this formed and how is that formed? These are the kind of questions you could ask. The first thing I'd like us to understand is this is the first 2 of our keywords about prevailing wind and relief rainfall. Pause the video, locate the Lake District, work out how much rainfall it gets. Okay, here's the Lake District, and it gets over 1,500 millimeters of rain. Look, this is where we are down here in the southeast of England. Next time you want to complain about the rainfall, just have a look there, okay? The Lake District gets almost 3 times or 2.5 times the amount of rainfall we get in London. So no more complaining, okay? We need to find out why that is. Now, if you look carefully at this map, you can see a clear pattern forming. This pattern is that the west gets heavy rainfall, the east gets less rainfall, and we're going to come on to the reasons in a moment. I'd like you to draw this neatly in your book, so I'm going to model it for you. We want to understand why it's so wet in the Lake District. First off, write that as a subtitle, relief rainfall. And then I simply want you to copy this diagram here. But it needs to be simple, and all it needs to be is that. That's the west, that's the east. So what happens is the prevailing wind, I'm not going to write the whole word because I'm doing this with a mouse, so you have to forgive me for the presentation. So this is the prevailing wind. So you can complete that. The prevailing wind It comes in from the ocean. It comes in from the Atlantic Ocean. You can complete that too. It comes in from the Atlantic Ocean, and as it hits this range of hills, it's forced to rise. Now, if you remember from science, when air rises, it gets cooler and heavier, and therefore it condenses. And as a result, high up, where you have hills, an upland area like the Lake District, you have relief rainfall. And I'll write that out for you. Apologies for the writing here. Then what happens is the air drops off the rain, and this is where the Lake District is. So you can do that there, right there, the Lake District. The air drops off the rain, and then it continues on to the east, and this is where London is, on the east side of the UK. Well, obviously we're much further south than the Lake District, but that explains why we have less rainfall here and much more rainfall here in the upland areas. The word relief is very similar to topography, if we remember that from the first lesson. Relief simply means the shape of the land, where the land is low, high, or flat, or steep. Okay, relief means the shape of the land. A really important thing we need to understand is about the rock type in the Lake District. As I said at the start, the Lake District is an area of extinct volcanoes from millions of years ago. As a result of that, the rock is igneous, and it's mainly granite, which is a very tough, resistant rock. But it's also impermeable. This means water can't get through. So as a result, you have lakes, and hence the name Lake District. You have lots of surface water. There's also lots of rivers as well, and the water just doesn't soak in. The opposite of impermeable is permeable, where water soaks in through cracks in the rock. Another thing to point out is that because the rock is very tough, it's also resistant to erosion and weathering. This means that you have an upland landscape. Okay, the reason that the mountains are not eroded or weathered is because they are resistant to erosion. We're going to come on to weathering in a couple of slides time. As a result of this also, because it's so resistant, we have very thin soil. It's not great for farming. It's certainly not great for farming crops. It's very, very good for hill sheep farming and kind of grazing, but it's not very good for growing crops. As a result of this, what we have is we have these things called ribbon lakes and misfit streams in the Lake District. The ribbon lake is shaped supposedly like a ribbon because they fill the bottom of a U-shaped valley, and they're often that kind of shape. They're in a sort of long stretched line. Okay, we've then got these things called misfit streams. The reason they're called misfit streams is that it's kind of, they shouldn't really be there. So once upon a time, these misfit streams would have wound their way through a V-shaped valley. Just ask yourself, what's happened to the V-shaped valley? Can you remember what happened to the V-shaped valley? That's right, it's been eroded by glaciers over time. So this is what your V-shaped valley would have looked like. And the river would have wound its way in between what we call interlocking spurs. Don't worry at this stage, we come on to this when we do rivers. But that stream shouldn't be there. I just want you to look at this incredible photo of the Lake District. I want you to see if you can identify 3 features of this landscape. We have a ribbon lake there. There's your misfit river or misfit stream. And the whole thing itself is a U-shaped valley here. Okay, this is important. I need to teach you about freeze-thaw weathering. This is the first of our processes. And just pause if you need to, or just let this run and just see what's happening in the animation. Freeze-thaw weathering breaks off pieces of rock off the edges of U-shaped valleys, and so that you end up with something called scree. And scree accumulates on a scree slope. You have lumps of rock that have broken off. Even though this type of rock is very resistant, weathering and erosion still do play a part, but just not at the speed of softer rocks. What I'd like you to do, please, is to, we're going to draw a simple diagram. First thing I want you to do is to write freeze, thaw, weathering. The first stage is here. I'm going to explain it and draw a simple diagram, and I'd like you to pause and I'd like you to write a short description beneath it. Stage 1, water, rainwater, fills cracks in the rock. Stage 2, the water freezes, and as you remember from putting your Coke can in the freezer in the summer, it expands. And as it expands, it puts enormous pressure on the rock. The crack gets wider. Stage 3, pieces of rock start to break off, forming scree. Okay, these are the broken bits of rock. I'll write it for you. That is called scree. Ask yourself, where in the Lake District do you think this might happen the most? And also when. Where and when might this happen the most? So with those 3 pictures, if you need to go back, please do. I'd like you to write an explanation of freeze, thaw, weathering. Now that you've done that, I want you to try and do this very straightforward 2-mark question. We're going to explain one way in which weathering, so we need a proper name for it, how has it affected an upland landscape in the UK? And you have to explain one. And to do this, you do a point development. Point development. Please pause the video now. Okay, so the answer is point, freeze, thaw, weathering, is when water freezes inside cracks in the rock, expands and breaks apart. But you could have also got a mark for just saying freeze, thaw, weathering creates scree slopes. It's that simple, but just remember we're going for accuracy. The next type of process that is really important to the Lake District is something called mass movement. This is a movement of a large mass of rock. We're going to focus on rock falls because rock falls happen a lot in the Lake District, but mudslides don't. You need 2 ingredients for mudslides to happen. They're pretty dramatic. You need lots and lots of rain. Well, the Lake District has got those. So what doesn't it have much of? The answer is mud. Because the rock is so resistant to erosion, the soil is very thin. So as a result of that, we just don't get mudslides. However, we do get rock falls, and the rock falls lead to scree. The second type of mass movement we're going to focus on is something called soil creep. This is a bit misleading because, as you can see from the animation, this stuff is hurtling down the hillside, okay? And it should be moving a bit slower. Soil creep is essentially when soil becomes saturated with water and gravity forces the soil slowly down a slope, okay? And the important thing is it happens slowly, okay? Creeping doesn't happen quickly. Okay, what I'd like us to do here is I'd like us to either talk about the first type of mass movement or the second that we've just talked about. If you want to go back, please do so. Again, it's explained one way. And the upland landscape is obviously the Lake District. Here are your answers. Rockfalls, point. have happened because of freeze-thaw weathering develop. It's that simple. But no, we're going for accuracy. You could have again got the mark for saying scree slopes. Okay, it's kind of repeating what we did earlier with freeze-thaw weathering. Or you could have said soil creep point is when saturated soil moves slowly down a slope. What I'd like you to do, this is not essential, but it's quite a good thing to do. Pause the video and see if you can identify the type of mass movement in both photos and what is the evidence? How do you know it's happening? Here's soil creep, you can tell because the fence is leaning at a kind of very steep angle. The second, we've got rock falls. The evidence of it, scree. Remember, I'm not saying even though it's a rock fall, I'm using that keyword scree. I want to hear those keywords in your writing and in your geography in general. Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to kind of attempt a drawing of an upland landscape, and we're going to focus on processes and features. Now, the features are things that you see. The processes are things that happen. So features are things that you see, and processes are things that happen. Okay, so processes are kind of actions. We're going to draw it step by step, and I'm just going to talk you through it, and then I'm going to give you the first letter of each word, and you can fill out the rest yourselves. So we're going to start by drawing a something shaped valley. Can you remember what this is? Excellent. It's a U-shaped valley. The rock type in the Lake District here was, please complete that. The first type of weathering that we have, we're going to learn about a second one in the next lesson. This was freeze-thaw weathering. Now ask yourself, why is it happening at the top of a U-shaped valley, not at the bottom? Why is freeze-thaw weathering happening at the top rather than at the bottom? We then had things happening here. So we then also had, as a result of weathering, we had pieces of rock breaking off, and that was rock falls. We ended up with pieces of rock, but we don't say rock, we say, good, it was scree. Okay, so this is a scree slope, which is a slope. I've climbed up one before. You have to scramble up boulders. This is a scree slope. Okay. Once you've done that, that's it pretty much. You've got a range of processes and features of an upland landscape. What we could also do, I think, is add in soil creep. So I'll tell you what, try and draw in some kind of wonky telegraph poles. Okay, that's another process that's happening here. So we've got soil creep as well. Okay, what I'd like us to do now, please, is to draw out this table. This is a way of summarizing the 4 different things that we've talked about. All we have to do is consider 4 different processes. First one was glaciation. What has it created? U-shaped valleys, and kind of explain why, or just a brief summary. Okay. Second thing is mass movement, and also they're also known as slope processes because they happen on a slope. Okay, so we had rock falls. We also then had soil creep, and what I'd like you to do is just to add some detail in there, and then we're going to see what you've remembered. The next thing was weathering, and there was a particular type that we looked at, that was freeze-thaw weathering. Great. This is the tricky word, climatological. That means the climate. Okay, we learned about a type of rainfall at the start of the lesson. If you need to go back, please do so. Fill this out with some detail. Okay, with your green pen, add in anything that you don't have, please. Okay, the last bit I'd like us to do is a quick recap quiz of the things that we've looked at. So just pause the video and write the answers to these questions. All right, here's the answers. Just green pen them in your work. And then when you finish, please upload your work to Teams, or if you're still having problems with that, then it's fine to email it to me or Miss Edmonds. The next lesson we're going to be looking at is about lowland landscapes, and it won't be as long as this one. This is lesson 4 we're going to be looking at, and then we can tie that all together and hopefully have a good comparison. Thanks for watching.